Now on to stanza 9. From here on we are moving to the last section of the poem where he tries to find consolation. So in the first section he presented a crisis to us, and in the second he explained to us what that crisis was, and now in this last section, the last three stanzas 9, 10 and 11, he tells us that it is true that there is such a problem, but then we have to somehow, life is still worth living, though we have lost this ability to see this visionary gleam. Though that is lost, there is so much more in life that makes life still worth living. So let us be happy about that. So that is how this goes on. So let me read the first part of stanza 9. Stanza 9, I think, is the longest stanza in this poem. So this is how it begins. O joy, that in our embers is something that doth live, that nature yet remembers what was so fugitive. So he says, oh, it is such a joy that in our embers, ember, what is an ember? Ember is a piece of coal, burning coal that is covered by ashes. But you just have to blow away the ashes to reveal the fire inside, and you can also rekindle the fire. An ember is not just a dead piece of charcoal, but it still contains the fire. So, oh joy, that in our embers is something that doth live, that nature yet remembers what was so fugitive. So he's so relieved and so happy that he still has at least some remnants of those memories which was so fugitive. Fugitive is something that flees, something that you cannot catch hold of, something that runs away from you. So here, what is fugitive? The memories of the happy past, the memories of the heavenly abode. That was fugitive because you had it only for a few years after you came to this earth. But he says how fortunate it is that I can still remember at least bits and pieces of those happy times. The thought of our past years in me doth breed perpetual benediction. The thought of our past years in me doth breed perpetual benediction. So he says that he feels these recollections of those very faint memories, they make him feel so grateful towards his childhood, because they restore in him a kind of joy and happiness. That is why perpetual benediction. They are a permanent kind of a blessing on him. That is this memory, even though it is faint. It really is a great blessing, he says. Not indeed for that which is most worthy to be blessed. Delight and liberty and simple creed of childhood, whether busy or at rest, with new-fledged hope still fluttering in his breast. Not for these I raise the songs of thanks and praise. So he says, I am grateful to childhood, but not for the usual things associated with childhood, as for instance, delight, liberty and hope. These three things are always associated with childhood, because when you are a child, generally children are always happy. Small things make them happy. You give them a simple toy, or you give them a small little toffee, that will make them happy. So that is why delight, that is a very common characteristic of childhood. Second one is liberty, in the sense that children are very free at heart. They have no inhibitions regarding anything, and so they have no restrictions in expressing their emotions or feelings. They experience a kind of freedom. You know that a child can do things that you cannot do, because once you're grown up, you have a lot of inhibitions which hold you back. Whereas a child might unabashedly go and talk to any stranger. He might ask anybody any question without even bother, because the child is not aware of its after effects, and so that is why liberty is another quality of the child. So that's why he says delight and liberty, the simple creed of childhood, whether busy or at rest, with new-fledged hope still fluttering in his breast. And again, a child always is hopeful. Hope is the third feature. because whether a child is busy or whether a child is at rest, he is always very hopeful. A child is generally not desperate. Even if you deny something to the child, he'll forget it very soon and he'll go on to something else. He will not clutch on to this feeling of hopelessness, because as Wordsworth believes, he is still blessed by the divinity. And so delight, liberty and hope always flutter in his breast. But he says, this is not what I am thankful for. Remember earlier he said that he is always grateful to childhood for something, and he says it is not for all these things, because these are natural qualities that come along with childhood. It is not for that I am thankful, but it is for something else. Not for these I raise the songs of thanks and praise, but for those obstinate questionings of sense and outward things, fallings from us, vanishings. So he says, when at least for a short time he is immersed in recollections of the childhood glory of the past, what happens is that his senses, all the five senses, they are shut against the world and the material world. At least for some time it falls away and vanishes. That is what he means here by fallings from us and vanishings. So delving into the memories of this happy past, at least for a short span of time, keeps all other disturbing thoughts at bay. So even if it is for a short while, he is free from disturbing thoughts of this earthly life. That is what he is grateful for. That is why he says that he is thankful to these memories. Blank misgivings of a creature moving about in worlds not realized, high instincts before which our mortal nature did tremble like a guilty thing surprised. But for those first affections, those shadowy recollections, which be they what they may, are yet the fountain light of all our days. So he says that we have a lot of blank misgivings, in the sense many things that we cannot understand, which we cannot explain, but all those feelings, all those fears and worries disappear, at least momentarily. And so that is what I am grateful for. And so the overwhelming feelings of doubt about the reality of the visible world, it just disappears. And we seem to move about in the world of the soul, where there are no doubts, where everything is very clear. And he says, it is for this that I am immensely grateful to the memories of childhood. And childhood memories here, generally it's not just childhood memories, it is memories that even go beyond childhood, that is the prenatal memories. And then he says those first affections, the first thoughts, those shadowy recollections. Why are they shadowy now? Because they are very hazy. He doesn't remember them clearly. They belong to another world, which be they what they may, are yet the fountain light of all our days. So he says, let us not try to find out what exactly those memories mean, where they originated from. Let us just take them for granted, and let us simply accept that even today, even when a person is grown up and has become an adult, these recollections act as a fountain light of all our day, are yet a master light of all our seeing. So those memories guide us through all our dark times, and they instill in us a hope for the future. It is the master light that guides us through the darkness of this earthly life. Uphold us, cherish, and have power to make our noisy ears see moments in the being of the eternal silence. So he says that these recollections, they can uphold us, they can cherish us, and even when we are terribly upset, they can make us feel that the noisy ears are the turbulent, disturbing experiences of life. So when you are immersed in recollections of the past, all your troubles, all your noisy years seem to be moments in the being of the eternal silence. So they seem to just melt away. All your problems are at least for the time being forgotten, and you are relieved from all your troubles. Truths that wake to perish never. And at such moments, he says that Wordsworth especially really believed what he said in this respect, and so he said that there were certain moods like this where he used to be completely oblivious. He used to become completely oblivious of this world, and he used to emerge into a meditation like stage where many truths were revealed to him, truths that never perish. He in such moments of meditation or a trance like state, he could understand many truths about life. That is why truths that wake to perish never, which neither listlessness nor mad endeavor, nor man or boy, nor all that is at enmity with joy can utterly abolish or destroy. So he says, if you have these recollections deep down in your heart, nothing can take it away from you, nothing can destroy it. Listlessness is having no interest in life, being terribly upset, unhappy, lazy, lethargic, all that is listlessness, feeling that there is no meaning in life. So he says listlessness, mad endeavor. Mad endeavor is the mad rush that you are engaged in. Your attempts to become rich, your attempts to become powerful, and all those things, to take revenge, to hate people, to love people, all that is included in mad endeavor. So these are the things usually that adults are involved in. So he has none of these things, whether it's listlessness or mad endeavor or the various experiences of becoming a man or a boy, and all that is at enmity with joy, everything that can take away your joy. None of these things can entirely abolish or destroy the joy that you derive from these happy recollections, because that is something that is deep down within you. Nothing can touch it or destroy it. So here you should understand that he is trying to console himself. He is consoling himself for the loss. It is true that we have lost something, but we still have something remaining. That is what he is trying to reassure himself. Hence, in a season of calm weather, though inland far we be, our souls have sight of that immortal sea which brought us hither. Can in a moment travel thither and see the children spot upon the shore and hear the mighty waters rolling evermore. Now here he says that he brings in a comparison, and he says that it's a metaphor here of a sailor who has done his voyage. He has got down from his ship and he has moved inland. He has traveled into the land, but then any moment he wants to see the sea, SEAC, he can just close his eyes, and in a moment his mind would take him to the sea, and immediately his internal peace would be restored. So that is the picture here. Hence, in a season of calm weather, though inland far we be, inland in the sense we travel away from the sea. The sea is the sea of eternity, and that is where you have God, and so you move away from it. You were born there. You were when you were born as a human child, you were deposited at the seashore, and then you started wandering inward into the inland. But our souls still have a connection with the sea. Our souls have sight of that immortal sea which brought us thither, can in a moment travel thither. So in a moment you just have to close your eyes, you just have to wish to go back, and you can travel there. That is what he means, is your recollections can take you, your memories can take you back to that blissful state, and you can see the children spot upon the shore and hear the mighty waters rolling evermore. So you can, in your mind's eye, you can see the visions of the eternal sea. So here the poet says that even after advancing in years, you can still return to the solace of the recollections of your pre-existence or your prenatal existence. So that is how he consoles himself, saying that all is not lost. You just have to spend some time with yourself, for yourself, and inside yourself you can experience what has been lost. It is not fully lost. So that was stanza 9. Now let's go on to stanza 10. Then sing, ye birds, sing, sing a joyous song, and then and let the young lambs bound as to the tabor sound. We in thought will join your throng, ye that pipe and ye that play, ye that through your hearts today feel the gladness of the May. So now he goes back to the beginning, almost in a circle. He, for a time, you remember how he began the poem saying that something was missing, and he also told us that there is happiness all around, only I am unhappy. And now he goes back to that stage and he once again awakens to the joy around him. So he tells the others, continue to enjoy, continue to sing, let me also join you. Then sing, because now he has found an answer to his problems. He has lost something, so he sat down, thought about it, and he finally came to the conclusion that what is lost, but then some vestiges of those happy days still remain. You just only have to concentrate and you can recall those happy memories, and that is enough to see us through the remaining years of our life. So that makes him happy. And so now he is ready to join the revelry of the spring season. Then sing, ye birds, sing a joyous song, let the lambs bound as to the tabor sound. We in thought will join your throng. Throng is group, crowd. And so there are people who pipe, that is the shepherds, they are blowing their pipe, and some are playing all kind of instruments. Ye that through your hearts today feel the gladness of the May. So everybody there is happy. They are all experiencing the pleasure of the spring season, the month of May. What though the radiance which was once so bright be now forever taken from my sight, though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, of glory in the flower. So he says, it is true that I have lost the radiance that was so bright once upon a time, and I know it has been taken from my sight forever. I also know that nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, because earlier I could see splendor in the grass, I could see glory in a flower. True, I cannot see all that now, but what if I cannot? We will grieve not, rather find strength in what remains behind. So he says, let us try to compensate with what we have now. Let us not worry about what we have lost. We will grieve not. We will rather find strength in what remains behind. Remains behind in what is left. In the primal sympathy which having been must ever be. In the soothing thoughts that spring out of human suffering. In the faith that looks through death. In years that bring the philosophic mind. So he says that though he has lost much, he says we still have some things remaining. For instance, we have the primal sympathy. Now the primal sympathy is this instinctive kind of a link or a sympathy between, or an understanding. Sympathy here means an understanding between nature and man. That is what he means by primal sympathy. So nothing can separate nature and man. The fact that man is never separate from nature, that he has always been a part of nature, this primal sympathy can never be totally destroyed. And so Wordsworth believed that man can never be completely cut off from nature. So anytime you are upset, just go back to nature. Nature will embrace you and it will inject in you the energy to go on with your life. So that is what he means here by the primal sympathy, the primal understanding between man and nature. In the primal sympathy which having been must ever be. So that was always there from the beginning, it will continue to be there. And then he says, in the soothing thoughts that spring out of human suffering. So human beings undergo a lot of suffering, but he says even that has a positive impact, because when you suffer, when you see others suffering, you learn a lot of things about life. You learn to appreciate the little joys in life, the small happinesses make you really happy and grateful. So in the soothing thoughts that spring out of human suffering. So the experience of human suffering makes him more broad-minded. it makes him more accepting of the others, and he feels in a way that is good. When you are a child, you don't experience such things, but then as you grow up, your experiences widen and it makes you a fuller person. And that is why he says, in the soothing thoughts that spring out of human suffering, even suffering can teach you good lessons. In the faith that looks through death, in years that bring the philosophic mind. So he says that as you go forward in life, your experiences make you more philosophic, and you understand that death is not the end of everything, and you learn to look at life. So with the increasing experiences of life, an adult learns that the soul doesn't really perish with death, and death is not really the end of anything, but the soul just passes into a vast world of eternity and immortality. And so you, through your experiences of life and of death, the death of other people and your own thoughts about death, you slowly develop a philosophic mind which enables you to accept things as they come. You become more mature and your attitude to life itself changes. The childish pleasures are gone, but instead now you have become a mature person who has come to terms with the world in his own way. So that is the end of stanza 10. Now we are on to the last stanza, stanza 11. Now let's go on to the last stanza, stanza 11. And oh, ye fountains, meadows, hills and groves, forbode not any severing of our loves. Yet in my heart of hearts I feel your might. I only have relinquished one delight, to live beneath your more habitual sway. So he says, he looks at the mountains and the meadows and the hills and groves around him, and he says, forbode not any severing of our loves. So he says, don't think that a sense of forbidding is a sense of something bad that's going to happen. So he says, don't worry. So he now addresses the fountains. He addresses the fountains, meadows, hills and groves, and tells them, forbode not any severing of our loves. Forebode, a feeling of foreboding is a feeling of something bad going to happen. So he says, he consoles them, saying that don't worry, don't think that there is going to be a severing of our loves. Severing is a cutting. To sever is to cut, a disconnecting. So he says, don't think that because I have lost this visionary gleam, I am not going to enjoy nature anymore. I will still find pleasure in fountains, meadows, hills and groves. He says, yes, yet in my heart of hearts I feel your might. He says, I still, in my heart of hearts, I can feel the power of your presence. He says, I have only relinquished one delight, to live beneath your more habitual sway. So he says, I have given up only one pleasure. And what is that one pleasure? It is that pleasure to experience the celestial light. It is true, I have lost that, but nothing else have I lost. I love the brooks which down their channels fret, even more than when I tripped lightly as they. He says, today I love the brooks. Brooks are those noisy streams which down their channels fret. Channel only means the path of the river or the brook. Fret here is to make a lot of noise, the noisy brooks. I love them today even more than when I was a child, than when I tripped lightly as they. Tripped lightly as they. Tripping is jumping and hopping. So when he was a little boy, he used to trip as lightly as the streams. He used to run over the rocks and jump up and down very easily like the stream. Today he says, I can't do that, but I love you more than I loved you then. So his love for nature, his appreciation for nature has actually increased. The innocent brightness of a newborn day is lovely yet. So he gives us a list. He says, it's as though he's telling himself, he's convincing himself that he has not lost the capacity, the ability to enjoy nature. He says, the brook Of course, the brook, I still love the brook. The fountains and the meadows, hills and groves, yes, of course, I still find them beautiful. And what about the newborn day, the brightness of the newborn day? Yes, I still find it lovely. The clouds that gather around the setting sun do take a sober colouring from an eye that hath kept watch over man's mortality. And he says, he looks at the clouds around the setting sun, and he says, I still can enjoy the colors of the those clouds, because we know that the setting, the clouds in the setting, the clouds in the evening sky when the sun is setting, they're very colorful. So he says, the clouds that gather around the setting sun do take a sober coloring from an eye that hath kept watch over man's immortality. So the eye that has kept watch over man's immortality is the sun. The sun has always been there, and he has always been watching generation after generation of people coming and going. So the sun has given sober colors, all sorts of colors to the clouds of the setting, around the setting sun, and yes, I am able to appreciate the beauty of those clouds. Another race hath been, and other palms are won. So he says that, so it is another race hath been and other palms are won. So he says that he has lost a few things, it is true, but then he has gained other things too. In compensation for what he has lost, he has definitely, though that is what he says here, that what he means by another race hath been and other palms are won, what he means is that it is true that he has lost the clarity and the colors of childhood, but then he has in compensation learned many valuable lessons from his experiences of human life and his adulthood. It has helped him to give more value to life, to appreciate life better. So that is what he means by another race hath been and other palms are won. Thanks to the human heart by which we live, thanks to its tenderness, its joys and fears, to me the meanest flower that blows can give thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears. So those last two lines might sound very familiar because they are very, very famous lines. To me the meanest flower that blows can give thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears. So he says, I am so grateful to the human heart by which we live. And because it is because we have the human heart that we are able to experience feelings like tenderness, joy, fears, different types of worries, anxieties, anguish. All this we experience because we have a human heart. Because once you are an adult, you live by your heart. You have lost all your earlier divine trappings. All that is gone. So now he thanks nature. He thanks God maybe for this human experience that he has lived through, because that has helped him recognize the significance of even the smallest flower. That's why he says, because of my experiences, to me, even the meanest flower, the smallest flower, the most insignificant flower that grows by the wayside, even that flower gives me such happiness. To me, the meanest flower that blows only means blooms, can give thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears. So the simplest thing in nature can prompt or provoke very profound thoughts, extremely profound thoughts in his mind. It can make him his experiences have made him a philosopher. He has learned, or his mind has been trained to perceive the significance of even unimportant things, and he is able to look at things from various angles today, and he has a deeper understanding of life. That is what he means by saying that even a small flower can give thoughts that often lie too deep for tears. Okay, and so he has become a very sensitive person. He has become a very passionate person. And this is the compensation that he has received for the loss that he had earlier faced. And now he has stopped lamenting and he has come to terms. He is at peace with himself now. So that is how the poem ends. So we can see that the poem actually ends on a very optimistic note, though it traversed many contours of dejection and disappointment and disillusionment. In spite of all that, he has recovered. By the time we reach the end of the poem, he is once again a happy man, a man who values his life, and a man who has learned a lot from his experiences. So that is how the poem ends, on a very happy and a very positive note. Now this particular ode, the Immortality Ode, I had mentioned at the beginning of the video that it is a Pindaric ode, and a Pindaric ode has 3 sections. It's divided into 3 sections or 3 stanzas generally. Usually we have, now the ode was actually it was in Greek. Now I had mentioned at the beginning of the video that this the Immortality Ode is a Pindaric ode, and odes in ancient Greece were generally meant to be chanted or sung. There would be a chorus, a group of people who would kind of recite it in a group or chant it in a group, and a Pindaric ode had 3 sections. The first one was the strophe, and then when the strophe is sung, people would move to one side, and then there is this the antistrophe was the next section when they would move to another side, and then there would be the epode when they would stand still. So that is how it was: the strophe to one side, and the antistrophe to the other side, and the epode they would stand in the center. Okay, so that is how it was structured. And here this particular poem, the Immortality Ode, also follows the 3 sections, though of course we do not see any movement along with the song, though it is not to be chanted. I have been telling you repeatedly about how there are 3 sections. So the 3 sections, maybe we can say, can be considered as the 3 sections. Then the second, the first part where he tells us about the crisis is the strophe. The second part where he tells us about, gives us an explanation of this crisis, is the antistrophe. And the third, where he finally consoles himself, thinking of the compensation he has received, that is the epode. So it is a perfectly structured ode, and this is one of the most popular poems of William Wordsworth, though of course it had been very harshly criticized because many critics could not really accept his idea of the child as a philosopher and the child as a seer. But it, however, remains one of his most read poem, and it is prescribed in the syllabi of many universities, and it still hasn't lost its popularity. And we know that in the case of Wordsworth, we know that Wordsworth is known as a nature poet, but his nature poetry is not just a description of nature. He always kind of links it with his mind, and he talks about the impact a scene in nature had on his mind. And it reminds me of the term that he has used, primal sympathy. So you can see the evidence of the primal sympathy in his poetry, because he unfailingly connects the two, nature and man. So in this poem too, that's what we see. He sees how the poet is always connected to nature. He is reluctant to sever his ties with nature, and he finds so much of happiness and solace in nature. So this is yet another beautiful nature poem of William Wordsworth.